Hi, welcome back to Connecting with Coaches. We are here today. I'm Carrie, and this is Jen and Amy, and we're talking today about the impact of trauma on our physical bodies, on our physical beings. We have all experienced extensive, complex trauma through our lives, and mainly through parenting, a child with reactive attachment disorder, and also then having to place a child into another home has been a real trauma inducer. And the aftermath of all of that grief and all of that trauma has really taken a toll on us and also on our clients. And our clients are asking about this all the time, like, what is going on? And so I thought, let's just have a conversation today and talk about how trauma impacts our bodies. So maybe I'll start, and you guys can share as much or as little as you want. This is our space, so we you don't have to say anything you don't want to say, and we're going to be kind of generic here with this is sort of what we see in our clients, because it's kind of a thing that we see all over the place. And I know for me, and I will share a little bit more about me, just because I feel like I've been in this world for a little bit longer than a lot of the clients that we see that are just going through it right now. And so I'm like 13 years removed now from a lot of the trauma that we went through. But it took a long time. The trauma, just because the situation changed, the trauma continued to spread its joy. And it doesn't just go away. Once the situation is different, it doesn't just go away. And so for me, the way that I've seen this really impact me is in my sleep, my energy, my adrenal gland, my cortisol levels, and my immune system. And that's all kind of wrapped up in one thing. So is that kind of what you guys have seen with your clients? And what do you want to share about that?
Yes, plus pain. Pain is
Yeah.
another big one. Is
Pain.
just that I don't know. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, I guess. I mean, it does impact all the systems though. Stress and cortisol. That's a hormone. So it goes to all the things, and then if we're living in stress up to here all the time, that's going to impact everything.
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting is, like, I remember when I was doing some crisis response training, they talked about how if you go through one incident of trauma, so that could be like a car accident or a house fire or something like that, that's a one-time, very stressful and scary, overwhelming kind of situation. About 80% of the people who go through one incident of trauma will not develop PTSD, but your body at that time is flooded with cortisone and adrenaline to help you fight through it or hide or run or whatever you have to do to get out of that situation. And it takes about 3 weeks for all of those hormones, those things to flush out of your body. But when you're living in this kind of a situation, it's almost like you're experiencing that amount of trauma several times in one day, day after day after day, for years on end. You just get so depleted and your body just can't keep up. Is that accurate?
Yes, I often tell my clients, well, actually, one of the things that we talked about in the moms group that I was leading just the last 6 weeks was, we talk about how this manifests in our body, trauma and the stress. And, we talk about the fact that, when people in the military are on the front lines in an active duty war, they often aren't required to be on the front lines day after day after day, 24/7 for years on end. And so, but we are somehow required to do that in our homes. And even though it's not like front lying, like we're getting shot at, like it's trauma. And the cortisol flood, often results in the PTSD and the extended, manifestation of diseases in the body.
Yeah.
So, and I think it gives another perspective for the people that are living in this, because you don't look at yourself like on the front lines, but we really are.
Well, I remember also in the crisis response training, they talked about how you can get PTSD from a threat to your physical life or a threat, excuse me, to your psychological life. And I had never heard that before because for me, my child was not violent. And I know a lot of our clients, they do have violent children. Mine was not. It was very much just the kind of covert manipulation and gaslighting and crazy making where you literally think you're going crazy all the time. And I remember just feeling like I was living on the edge of sanity. And if one more thing happened, I thought, I'm gonna like go off the edge. And I didn't have words for that. Like, what does that even mean? And I remember thinking like, okay, well, I could go to a psych hospital or, they could put me in a room with a vest on, and at sometimes that sounded kind of like a reprieve. That might be nice, but like, can you come back from that? I didn't know if you could make it back from that. And that was my fear.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I have several clients right now that are dealing with physical, like major physical long-term damage from the cortisol, of repeated cortisol flooding. And, they're oftentimes diagnosed with, things that you wouldn't just maybe associate.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those diagnoses. What have you seen or your clients? I know I've seen MS, I've seen Lyme disease. What else have you guys seen?
I've seen heart issues, heart related issues. I've seen cancer, um, you know, just the issues that are like, I'm sorry, I'm losing the word, like intestinal sort of issues, because when
Mhm.
this body contains that much stress, all your organs, like Amy said before, are just not functioning correctly. So the IBS kind of symptoms, or
Well, and when you're having anxiety at a
Mhm.
real high level, depending on where you feel that anxiety, it could be in your shoulders, it could be in your breathing, could be in your gut. And wherever you feel that,
Yeah.
typically you're going to have more issues there. What else have you seen, Amy, with clients?
Well, the vagus nerve connects to all of the organs. And so when we're talking about stress, it makes sense that the whole point of it is to go from the midbrain to all of the organs to save our lives, to
Mhm.
keep us from dying in whatever way, emotionally, like you were saying, psychologically or physically. And so it does impact all of the organs. And so when you think about um, the stress into the heart, for example, if you are in a fight, flight, or freeze, but you freeze, then you've got all of that pumping of blood into the heart and you're not doing anything. So it's just like it slams into those valves and there's no really way for it to go. And so it's just really hard on the heart to have all of that pressure, and it's not being used
Mhm.
when you're just fawning, or when you're just shut down, in that shutdown side. So that makes sense that we would see, heart problems, and of course cancer. Like, that's total cellular
Mhm.
regeneration of a bad cell. And so that gets right down into the cellular level. And then the vagus nerve is really connected with the gut too, in that when you're under stress, you don't really need your food. So like, you just need to get away. So a lot of times that vagus nerve will just dump and you will just have diarrhea. But a lot of times it will just shut down completely and you're just constipated and it's just like a brick and there's just no movement. And when you're talking about that over years and years of time, you're not getting the nutrients. If you're dumping, you're not getting the nutrients from your food, and you're getting toxic buildup if you're constipated. And
Right.
so when you're talking about toxic buildup, like, oh my soul, that's in every cell. So it really, this book that I picked, that I was one of my classes required. There's another one too that I always recommend because it's more from a Christian perspective, called Dangerous Emotions, but it really goes into all of the impacts of, like, you will look up your issue of the day, and it's going to be related to stress. We're not meant to live in stress.
Yeah.
We're
And
meant to
I just want
return
to
to
say,
homeostasis.
yes, and I want to say, this could sound like a really discouraging conversation, because like
Yeah.
when we were going through all of our trauma, and then you find out, oh, great, now I've got health issues too. And, it can be very discouraging, and we want to get to an encouraging place. But, Amy, I was just thinking, one of the first years that we were trying to get to homeostasis and trying to get, our son was in his new home, and we were trying to recover our family and all of this. And I remember going to the gym because I was so out of shape and I was overweight, and my hair was, I had hair and skin issues and all kinds of things. And I remember going to this, I got a personal trainer, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to lift some weights, or, get me back into shape or something. And this woman said to me, oh, honey, we're not even going to start with the weights yet. You can't even stand on one foot. I had like no balance. I had no center. I couldn't hold myself up even.
Yeah.
I wasn't walking straight. I couldn't do anything. So she got me on the ground and started just doing some things to build my core back up and to get me so that I could stand on one foot. And now I lift weights, and I can do what I need to do. But it took some time, and I think that's one of the things that we have so much of a struggle with in this, is we're so sick of everything. Are you
You just want
kidding
to
me?
feel better.
Can it just be okay? And, we're sorry to all of you who are going through this. We're going through it too. And we have been going through it for a while, and we want to offer hope because it is a journey. It is a process. It's hard. It's not fun. We wish we could just, snap our fingers, but there is hope and there is healing. God made our bodies incredibly, and there are doctors and different people who know how to help us. So let's talk about that for a little bit. What kind of things have you guys learned through the years about how to help people with this?
Well, I think first of all, it's just encouraging people to process through the grief. Like if you don't process through this, you're just going to stay stuck.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so what's the best way? I mean, I'm just thinking like our ministry, that's actually what our ministry is designed to do. So if you're out there and you're like, okay, well, what does that look like? Well, go to carryotool.com and look under the resources or under our store, because we've got blogs, we have podcasts, we've got all of these connecting with coaches podcasts to help you with that. We've got individual coaching with any one of us. We've got couples coaching. We have coaching for your non-rad children. We've got groups that we have for moms online via Zoom with one of the coaches. We have groups for your kids. We have a retreat that we do twice a year, and that would be the one if you really are needing to process this grief. And we've all been through it. We've all been to it. So that has helped, I think, because when you can dump all of that emotional and psychological and spiritual grief and trauma that you've been through, it gives you the ability then to start dealing with some of the physical kind of stuff. So that's where I would start, but that's a great way to start. What else, you guys?
Well, I always say it's the best investment that you can make in your future, right? The counseling, the individual counseling or the groups, either for yourself or for your husband and yourself or your spouse, your children. Because if you invest in that and you process through the grief in a healthy way, you're essentially then investing in your health and physically. So that would be my
Yeah. Well, and
advice.
it helps you get out of the past, because part of what PTSD is that it doesn't make sense. And so, and it hasn't like finished its course because we haven't made sense of it. And so our body is trying to still keep us safe from something that we haven't processed and made sense of. And so we have to face it. Avoidance is the worst way to cope, because it's going to stay in you, and your body's going to keep bringing you to safety, because you haven't taken control of your body and said, I got you. You are safe. We figured this out. We can let this go. And
I
so
so
having
relate to
support to do
that,
that.
Amy, because I went back to grad school, and I know both of you are in post grad school right now. And that was one of the ways, like, I was trying to make sense of it
Yep.
because it made no sense. And here I am left in all this trauma. I had to figure it out. So,
Yes.
I mean, you
And
don't
that's what
have,
your book did too. Writing your book, like coming to a a trauma narrative, in your case it was a full book of just what happened. How did this happen?
well, and
That is
I
what
want to even,
healing is.
yeah, I want to even speak about that book because, so my book is called Relinquished When Love Means Letting Go, and you can find that on Amazon or at our website. But when I wrote that, the PTSD was so severe that I actually had to hire an editor to help me write out the trauma parts because I couldn't remember. And the editor was reading it and she's like, well, what's the big deal?
Oh
And
gosh.
it just kind of, minimized what we had been through, but like my brain could not do it.
No. Yep.
And so I had to hire somebody who knew something about RAD and knew something about this kind of trauma, and they kind of added the details in. And I went back and read it and thought, isn't that what I wrote? Because it was accurate, but
Yeah.
I needed help with that because my brain couldn't
Mhm.
even go there. But you're right,
Yes.
that was part of the healing. And,
Yep.
all of us have had to take steps with looking into a more naturalistic kind of path for healing some of the things in our own lives because there's not a drug, a synthetic made pharmaceutical drug that you can take that's going to heal your body from this. So, in fact,
No, a lot of the anti-anxiety things, they just shut you down for a minute, but that does nothing for your window of tolerance. So your window of tolerance is still tiny, and you're popping a pill, or that's how we get into alcohol and these other things, to do what you have not learned the skill to do. Your
yeah,
body will help you calm down. But again, we have to have our thinking brain doing that, not our body brain, not our nervous system
right.
doing that.
Well, and I want to say also, if you are on meds for, sleep or anxiety or depression or any of those kinds of things, or a combination of, work with your doctor. And they always say, if your doctor did not tell you that you need to be in therapy, working through that issue while you're on the medication, then they're not helping you. You shouldn't, unless there's a brain chemistry issue. Most of us had what we would call like circumstantial anxiety, circumstantial depression, circumstantial sleep issues, all of these kinds of things. And so there might be meds needed for a season, but you should be in therapy working with somebody to help you so that 6 months or a year or however long later, you can get off of that medication and have your body work on its own. But we've also found that for me, I'll speak for myself, I have had to find a doctor who's more willing to look at some natural supplemental kinds of things because I don't want to be taking pharmaceuticals that are addictive and that have mood issues and
Well, the side effects of them are insane. Like if you read the insert of those.
Yeah.
So, but Dr. What is his name? I can't think of his name. Dr. Sears. He calls it pills and skills. And so and that's what we're teaching in our coaching. That's what we're teaching in our groups, is the skills, so that you don't have to be dependent on the pill forever. You
Mm-hmm.
can get yourself out of the freeze state and the shutdown state, but
Mm-hmm.
by getting yourself grounded and getting into your body. And
Mhm.
you can get yourself
Well,
out
and
from over the
learning,
top with
yes.
breathing and all those skills that we teach.
Yeah, and boundary kinds of things, because when we start living in a really dysfunctional way, not really even by our own choice, some of us maybe, and some of you out there, maybe you never really had a functional family to begin with. Some of you did, and then you brought this trauma into your home, and now your family's totally dysfunctional. You don't know how you got here, and you don't know how to get out. And so we help you recover or learn for the first time how to have boundaries. I remember seeing a psychiatrist years ago when I was struggling with all these things and was on quite this little cocktail of
Cocktail.
meds. Yeah. In fact, I remember when Michael Jackson died and they listed his medications, and I went, uh-oh, because I was on like almost the same. Now, mine wasn't being, you know,
Intravenously
intravenous.
at
I wasn't
home.
being OD'd over every night, but anyway, it was still kind of a scary thing looking at the names of those drugs and realizing that was on what I was on just to get me to sleep because I couldn't
Yep,
sleep.
yep.
And yeah, crazy, crazy, crazy. But as you start getting off of those things, some of that still remains, where I
Mhm.
still do struggle with sleep once in a while. I still do struggle with staying asleep. I still do struggle waking up in the morning and feeling refreshed and ready to go, because when your body and your brain have been in trauma and survival for so many years, it takes a lot of time. So we just want to be encouraging to you guys that, first of all, if you didn't know this was a thing, it might tick you off a little bit because it's like, oh, great, now I have this to deal with too. But also, it might help you realize why and validate that that's really what's happening, and then be able to really get some help. So,
Mhm.
some of the things I would recommend, and you guys think if you've got anything else here too, but I did a hormone panel with my doctor, and she suggested that I do the um, saliva. All I could think of was the word spit. That's not appropriate. But anyway, there's a saliva test that you do in the morning, at noon, in the afternoon, and at bedtime. And it'll show you, first of all, your hormone levels through the day. It'll show you the balance between your hormones, because if you're too high in one or too low in another, or the balance between them is not good, that can really help you just by getting on the correct type of hormones to help your body, because we need that to function. But mine also included a cortisol test, and the cortisol should start out high in the morning, and then as the day goes on, it should come down here so that you can sleep. And mine has been pretty much flatline for about, I don't know, for several years. So we're working on that now to get that pumped up. Are there other things that you guys can think of that people could do to help themselves, or even to guide their doctor in knowing? Because you may go in and just say, my stomach's upset.
Mhm.
If you don't tell them either I have PTSD or I've been living in a constant state of trauma for this many years, you need to tell your doctors that, because if they don't know that, they're just going after that symptom. And we don't want to just go after the symptoms. We want to get to the root cause of this and help that way. But what have you guys seen that might be helpful?
I think just getting a second opinion. I mean, not just taking for face value what you've maybe always listened to from maybe a primary doctor, and just taking the time to get a second opinion. And like, I mean, I would recommend praying about it and just following what the Lord will do. And there's so much out there that I think we can go the natural route that that we sometimes just don't really give too much homage for. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, and for those of us that we've just given until we're so depleted, the last person we take care of is ourselves then. And we end up in this totally depleted state, nutritionally, spiritually, emotionally. And so I think one of the base level things is just to make sure we're getting the nutrition that we need, basic nutrition, that we're not just surviving still on junk,
Mhm.
like if you want to get well, your body needs the building blocks to do that. And so we have to have good protein, good vegetables, good fruits. Those are antioxidants. And it's oxidation that we're feeling in all of these places. So antioxidants are what's in fruits and vegetables to kind of Pac-Man that up in our bodies. And that's what healing is at the cellular level. So you need a foundation upon which to do all these things, which
Right.
just, we have to be able to invest in ourselves to
Well,
make
and
that
those of you
switch.
that are not sleeping, get into your doctor, your chiropractor, your naturopath, get into somebody and get that taken care of first because
Generally, that is an adrenal issue too. So it is a serious thing to have looked at, and not just take a sleeping pill for. Because
Yeah.
for people that have been through the stress, the living in the stress that we have, that is related to the adrenals and your nervous system staying stuck in on. And
yeah.
so you do need something besides a sleeping pill for that,
Well, and it's
in
it's a
order to get
long
out of the long
term,
term.
yes,
Yeah.
thing. You may have to take the sleeping pill at least in the crisis and in the moment to
Yeah.
get you the rest because when you are not sleeping, especially numerous nights in a row, your cognitive ability goes down, your irritability goes up, you
And
can't
you're not
handle.
healing because we
Well, you're
heal
No,
not,
when we
yeah, I
sleep.
was just gonna say that, Amy, you're healing when you're sleeping. So when you're not
in
Yes.
that
sleeping,
deep sleep, the restful sleep. If you don't
right,
Yep.
get to that restful sleep, then you're not healing.
right,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, wow. Anything else you guys want to add today?
Well, one thing that just came to my mind when we were talking was the fact that, some people that are going through the process of thinking about finding another family for their child with reactive attachment disorder or are going through that process right now. I think sometimes there's this myth that once the child is out of the home, then everything's just going to fall into place,
We'll all go back to normal.
Yeah, and that's really not the case. I think that's when everything, I mean, even though it was horrific for us the entire time that our former daughter was in our home, it's like that's when it like, because then you're dealing with the others' opinions and the shame and the judgment. And so your body is still reacting. And just because, the fire is put out in the home, it's not like everything else is just,
The cleanup job has only just begun.
Yeah.
right.
I tell clients that sometimes it's like if you're coming for a quick fix, and I don't mean to minimize your pain at all because we've all been there. But like you do have that in your mind sometimes, like if we can just do this, it's
Yeah,
like your pain is still going to be there. It's going to shift.
yeah.
And, so you've kind of, we'll help you with this process because it's a hard process. It's the hardest thing we've ever had to do. Um, but it's a process and it's going to take some time, whether this child stays in your home, is in treatment, is in a new home, whatever options you choose, the trauma that has come into your life, the grief that you've experienced, they're real and they need to be processed and it's not just going to go away on its own. So,
Well, and
Yeah.
when we've lived in that adrenal state for so long, we forget that we don't really realize that we're living on adrenal until they're gone. And
Yeah.
then there is no adrenaline.
then you just crash.
And you do cry, and you don't, it takes a week or two sometimes.
I didn't get
Like
out
you
of
just,
bed almost for
you
about a week.
almost, you almost feel, well, I've had, this has happened to at least two of my clients now significantly. And it's also what happened to me. Like I was just went right into the next thing, like I actually got a job for the first time in 16 years, right when she left, like the same month. It wasn't really planned that way, but that's how it happened. And so I just kept going on adrenaline for a whole nother year. And then everything stopped because my husband's military, so we PCS'd. And at that point, when everything stopped and I wasn't going on adrenaline anymore, um, there wasn't anything left. And that's when I couldn't get out of bed. And that's when the grief it struck hard and all of that. So
Yeah.
I think it really depends on your situation and, you know, what else you have going on in your home and family.
That's such a
But
good
there is a
point.
point where you have to meet it. And
Yeah.
so you can push it down the road, which I
Yeah.
guess that's what I did by going to work. I pushed it down the road, but it comes to get you because
Yeah.
God didn't create us to live this way forever. And he wants to be our peace.
And
Mhm.
he's going to
So
heal
he is
you.
going to come after you,
He's the
even
healer.
if what that looks like is make you lie down, make you lie down.
Yeah. And boy, I have experienced that recently. There have been lots of make you lie downs, and sometimes it feels like he's being cruel or it feels like he doesn't care. And it's so the opposite. He's saying, sweetie, lay your head down and let me heal you. You need the rest. Your body is tired. Your soul is tired. Your mind is tired. You just need to rest. Stop doing everything for everybody and just let me love you and let me heal you. And that's what he does. So he's pretty amazing. I am so thankful for this team. For those of you who are out there and you're just connecting with what we're saying and you're saying, man, that is me. My cortisol is burnt out, my adrenals are fried, or my gut is a mess, whatever it is. And you want some help with processing through this grief and trauma that you've been through or right in the middle of, please reach out to us. You know, we're here to help. We do coaching via Zoom and it looks just like this. And we just chat with you about what's going on and give you some tools from our master's degrees and from life and from all the different things we've learned from our clients through the years. So we'd love to be here for you as well. And so thank you guys for joining me again today, and we'll see you next time.